Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the outrage because the SCOTUS, they did not launch their DOB ruling yet, and everyone thinks it's supposed to drop tomorrow because usually, well, they were supposed to drop rulings today, but then they're like, we're going to add an extra day. And I'm like, are they adding the extra day because they're expecting chaos a bit and they want to make sure everyone's out of town, kids are moved, all kinds of other stuff before they drop the news? But they did announce, at least the SCOTUS blog Twitter page had announced that they were going to announce particular rulings this week. And so we got the one on the guns today, and we're expecting the one on Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs case, tomorrow. That's what we're expecting. I'd be surprised if it wasn't tomorrow. People are flipping out about that, and they're flipping out about the striking down of this law in New York, requiring if you want a permit, you have to prove that you need it for self-defense, which is nuts. But it's been there for a long time, but they struck it down, and it's also strengthening Heller and other stuff as well. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Biden. He keeps saying some crazy stuff about the gas, and he's just really, really determined to blame it on Putin, to accept no responsibility for any bad policies. Why would he? But the more he blames Putin, the more he just makes himself look incompetent and America look weak, in my opinion. I'll go through that. We'll go through some of his comments. And Jennifer Granholm was also questioned the other day about some stuff. And you can really see that they're not planning to solve the problem because they really want to move toward a greener kind of energy, which Germany wanted to move toward greener kind of energy. And they were at a point where they were being dependent on Russian oil and stuff, and now they're at a point where they're going to have to fire up the whole coal. So they failed, and I don't think the U.S., which is a much larger country, should follow in their footsteps. But we'll talk about that. And also, there's been some information on Title IX that's been dropped as well. So it's what we have been expecting about Biden and interpreting it to also include gender identity. And so it's going to be very possible that if your schools where your kids go, if they don't accept gender identity and other things into the school, then that would be discrimination, and they could lose certain funds for certain things, including school lunches, which I've talked about quite a bit. But it's official now, and I guess we'll probably see these official effects go into maybe, I guess, next year. But the school year's over now, but we'll see that coming down the pipe. So anyway, before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I've written on the site. You guys can check out, I posted a video this morning about one dealing with abortion and Christianity, which I don't like to argue. Why don't like is a strong word, is a strong phrase. I just know it's a waste of time to argue with people from that sort of authority. So usually I keep my arguments secular, but someone came off as if they were Christian, so I was replying to them. So I did a post this morning, and I referenced some articles that are available on the website. You guys can check those out. You can check out other articles that I've written, and also other videos that I've done, like when I went to Right to Life, or March for Life, and that was January, and the gas was so much cheaper, and it was high. I thought it was high, but it was much cheaper. Much cheaper. As a matter of fact, to fill the car cost $50, and now it costs like $100 to fill my car. So we have jumped quite a bit since then. But you guys can check out that kind of content from my website. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. Whatever you can do, whether it's $10, $20, $50 more. I really, really appreciate it. There are costs associated with what I do, and I Appreciate everyone who can go the extra mile to give. If you cannot, or you frankly just don't want to, you can also just support by, I appreciate you watching, I appreciate you commenting, sharing, word of mouth, telling other people to engage with Black Tea News. Very much appreciate it. Make sure that you guys are following on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. If you watch on Facebook, make sure that you're still subscribing on YouTube. I'm inching closer to where I want to be with some numbers, so I appreciate people who are making sure that they're subscribed. If you like the page, make sure you're following the page, because Facebook changed their stuff around to like following rather than liking. So make sure, even if you like the page, that you also are following. And if you're subscribed on YouTube, hit the notification bell, because I don't know. I think on Twitter now you can super follow people too. I don't know why they just don't see when people say that they want to follow someone, that they take their word for it. I don't know. But maybe it's just more hurdles they want to put around people, so you can't see content that they don't want you to see. I don't know. But anyway, I thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all that you do. Also check out different merchandise that I have on the website. And I'll mention this shirt again because we're getting close to 4th of July. The Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document with this Frederick Douglass. And he's wearing like the deal with it sort of gangsta glasses and stuff that are like pixelated. But the little white pixels in his glasses are actually made out of stars. So I thought that was a nice touch. So you guys can check out merch like that. The My Minding My Business shirt, which I made because I was really sick of people talking about abortion not being any of my business, but they want my tax dollars to fund it. So I'm like, this kind of seems like a everybody problem when you want everyone to participate. So anyway, I made that shirt. So another ones you guys can also check out at the website. Another big announcement, there is going to be a gubernatorial debate in Michigan with all of the candidates who are running. Actually, I guess there's about to be several, but there's going to be a big one in Macomb, that Brighter Michigan PAC, who, by the way, I am in their studio. And as always, if I say something today that triggers you, I don't care. They don't care. It doesn't work like that. But I'm always grateful to be here, and they like uplifting conservative voices. So, the cool news about that is that they will be having hosting a debate, Macomb County, and all the candidates will be there. But and they will be on the radio and stuff, but it's going to be streamed on the Black Tea News channel. It'll also be streamed from the Brighter Michigan page. But if you want to watch it and you can't go, you can just watch it on my page. So it's pretty cool. Pretty much kind of exclusive. So if that date is the 30th of this month, so it's coming up very, very soon. The doors open for that will be at 5:30. The debate will start at 7 o'clock at the Royalty House at 8201 East 13 Mile Road in Warren, Michigan. But it's going to be really cool. Really, really excited for it. They got some it's a diverse panel of Charlie Langton is moderating, and you got both sides of the aisle like asking the questions. So it should be a lively debate, and they're going to do kind of some traditional segments and kind of go free for all, sort of let it rip style. So it should be very interesting. I know I have people who support different people in the who watch the show. So again, you'll be able to watch it from my page. So very, very excited about that. Okay. You guys know I like to start off with a little laugh, and I'm amused with all the hate today from folks because it's Clarence Thomas's birthday. So Right to Bear Memes just put this together. And of course, this person is screaming is very iconic. And he's just there smiling and laughing. I wonder what it's like to be this person and how often they are maybe recognized in real life. The screaming person who was screaming at Trump's inauguration, and it's just a living meme now. But I love Justice Thomas, and I hope he's still with us for a while and doesn't plan on retiring anytime soon. But if he is, hopefully in like after 2024, when we have a new president, it would be so egregiously outrageous and unjust in this world if Joe Biden of all people got to replace him. But he's just a gem right now. And I know so many people hate him, which is funny because we're supposed to adore Ketanji Jackson because she's Black. I'm not saying she doesn't have credentials and all the other kind of stuff, but her credentials wouldn't matter if she weren't black. If she weren't black, she wouldn't have been nominated. So we can toss that all out of a window. But we're supposed to uplift her because she's a black woman, but at the same time, they hate Clarence Thomas. So, they're just full of it. But I really do like him, and it's someone had a meme where people are like people say Republicans are racist, but this is the kind of court that we want, and it was just Justice Thomas copied like 9 times. And I'm like, yes, that is absolutely what we would prefer. And he writes good opinions, and he also wrote the one, I believe, for the gun ruling today. So New York is very upset. You had the governor who voiced her outrage because in New York, if you want a permit, if you want to be able to carry a gun, which I'm told is very hard unless you have some connections to like do a concealed carry, you have to prove that you need it for self-defense, or that's what it's for, and etc. Now, the Second Amendment isn't for self-defense. That's not what it's for. I'm glad we have the right to bear arms for self-defense. I'm glad that we have it for hunting. I'm glad that we have it for sports when people just want to go to the range and shoot. It's a fun thing to do. I did it with my sisters some time ago, and they were better than me, and that was really annoying. But it's a fun activity, and you can have guns and love guns and never have to actually use them on another person. But the idea that you have to prove that you need it for self-defense to be able to carry it. What if you can't meet their standard for whatever reason, and then you need it and you're unarmed? It kind of seems really ridiculous, considering that in New York they are stabbing people in broad daylight. They're attacking people on subways, and these are criminals. They're upset about crime. They're upset about all these things of how dangerous it could be. But I'm like, but you guys run your state, you run your city so terribly, and it puts all these other innocent law-abiding citizens at risk because you won't step up to the plate and put these people in jail and be harsh with the penalties and make sure that these repeat offenders don't come out again and again and again and again, because you guys are so woke and you don't want a disproportionate amount of black people or brown people or whatever in jail, when it's like, just look at the intent, what they actually did, and if they're bad, put them in jail. But that's not the world we live in. So everything's the gun's fault, and they're concerned about how dangerous the world is. And I don't know how to take them seriously. But anyway, they're upset because the courts ruled that no, you don't need to do that. And so here's the governor, who somehow worse than the last one.
And I'm sorry this dark day has come. That we're supposed to go back to what was in place since 1788, when the Constitution of the United States of America was ratified. And I would like to point out to the Supreme Court justices that the only weapons at the time were muskets. I'm prepared to go back to muskets. I don't think they envision the high-capacity assault weapon magazines intended for battlefields as being covered for this, but I guess we're just going to have to disagree.
Yes, we're going to have to disagree because you're wrong. It's really that simple. Which they had actually addressed this in the the ruling, that these amendments don't just apply to what was in the past. Like when it comes to being able to get a warrant and stuff, even if it's digital, they still can't just take your stuff just because it's not them going in your house and searching and stuff. Or what you say on social media and other places, or with a phone, like your free speech is still protected regardless of the fact that there's technology involved and the times have changed. And it still doesn't make sense, because muskets weren't the only thing that were back then. As a matter of fact, they affirmed that you could use the Second Amendment. Like when there's like, hey, can we use these cannons to fight against these pirates. They're like, yeah, that's what the Second Amendment is for. And there were high capacity guns back then as well. Anything as powerful as we have today? No. But the point of the Second Amendment, it's not for hunting. It is not for self-defense. It is not for sport. It is to protect your liberties against a tyrannical government. That's what it's for. So being like, these things are too dangerous, while you guys have nukes and drones and all this other kind of stuff, there's already an imbalance of power. And you're like, why be comfortable with muskets? You know what? I think she's lying about that too. I absolutely think she's lying. I do not think she would be okay if we just went back to muskets. I don't think anyone believes her if there are kids like, yeah, let me like a 15-year-old on the streets in New York walking around with a musket. And you know what? I don't want there'd be crazy deranged people like with the swords or whatever that are on the end just stabbing people, because they're just stabbing people in broad daylight, as I said, in New York. They should be concerned with what's actually going on with the crime there. CNN has had a couple different hot takes. I'm going to play one of them. One second.
David Gergen, to you here. Thomas, significant that he wrote this opinion given how long he has said that the Second Amendment, in his view, has been treated as a second-class right. When you look at the opinion, page 23, nothing in the Second Amendment, he writes, text draws a home public distinction with respect to the right to keep or bear arms. Now the question is the political implications of this in your mind. As we've seen, by the way, more of the public polling, even new polling out this morning, moving in favor of more regulations on gun ownership.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a startling decision in two respects. First of all, the notion that this court has now endorsed the idea that if you're in Times Square, amidst all of hubbub and human reaction and potential gangs and so forth and so on, that people can be easily carrying around concealed weapons. That's just startling. It's like, what, are you crazy in Times Square? So I think there is that element. But secondly, I don't think the country saw this coming. Yes, the New York officials.
So he's like, oh, people could have guns in places where there's other people around. That literally happens all the time in other places. But what about people who have illegal guns and knives and other things on them and would be willing to just attack anyone? And how do you protect yourself? How do you protect, especially if you're a woman? I saw a terrible video. I think it was in Pennsylvania. There was this guy he was a sexual assaulter. And there was a video, and he was attacking these three women, and they were fighting him as hard as they could, but he was just wailing on them, and it was totally unprovoked. He walked by him and just started hammering on them. And I had retweeted, I'm like, get armed. Because between like the power difference between a man, especially like a feral crazy man, and a woman, and in this case, three women, like the gun is the equalizer. If you want to talk about women and care about women and protecting women and stuff, and you don't want them to be armed, as dangerous as New York is right now, and to think that I go to so many places with people who are armed, who have a gun on them at all times, including at different churches and stuff. Someone who's always packing, and it's so crazy to me that there's so many people who are just so terrified of that prospect. And I'm just like, I go to a rally or a Republican event, I'm not scared because all these people are armed. I'm like, if something goes down, I know who I'm like. Like, I know they're really good. I know they got some. Like, it's just so bizarre to me. But when you live in sort of a different kind of world and headspace, and maybe some of it is just like rhetoric on TV, and they don't really feel that endangered because a lot of these people have their own security. Again, people get permits and stuff in New York, but I've heard that you got to kind of know somebody, but this sort of ruling makes it more equal for everyone to be able to carry regardless of your sex and your gender and your race. It's just classes to reject this kind of stuff because other people, including people who will preach and condemn guns, are around armed people who at the end of the day can protect them. But what about you? What about you?
Have been looking at it, but the country's head has not been here. And I think it's going to add to the sense increasingly in the country, especially when the abortion decision comes down, that we have a Supreme Court that is out of touch with modern day realities. That this does not represent what the democracy, the democratic views of the country. They've gone off on their own, on their own crusade. It comes at a time when people are very, very worried about the strength of our democracy. And I think this will be seen as anti-democratic by a lot.
Protecting your rights and saying, hey, you don't need this qualifier on in order to participate, they paint as being a danger to your democracy. I think these elitist, these verified people who will have people who will always be armed, and then you not being able to protect yourself while they want to defund the police / there's sometimes in Uvalde where there's like incompetent police who won't save I think that's a more danger to our lives and our democracy than anything else. And there's so much rhetoric around like, oh, they're not reading the room. You're not supposed to read the room when you're a justice. You're supposed to read the law. These people are so angry. Let's look at some Anna Navarro, who's supposed to be Republican. Who's supposed to be? I don't know what all her stuff was like before, but it was like Trump broke her brain and her spirit. And she's like, if they think that she goes on The View and she's actually a Republican, that's just nonsense because, the way she talks about Roe v. Wade now and abortion and these other issues, it's not on par with conservatism or republicanism or anything like that. But she said, how tone deaf to America's very real gun violence epidemic can the majority of the Supreme Court be? This is a disgrace. Again, their job isn't to listen to like, oh, we watch The View, so we have to do what these ladies say on The View and be with it. Like, we have to vote on what's with it today. That's not their job. Absolutely not their job. So this kind of talk is just really stupid. And I'm seeing people trash the Republicans who voted for the gun control measure the other day while the Supreme Court strengthens gun rights, and they look like clowns. By the way, there's like 14 now. I don't know all of the 14. I guess McConnell will maybe be one of them then. But here's like the original 10 that got together. Oh gosh, there's got to be more because I don't see Kerman on there. So yeah, let's. Joe Biden, of course, made a statement. I'm deeply disappointed by the Supreme Court's ruling in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Since 1911, the state of New York has required individuals who would like to carry a concealed weapon in public to show a need to do so for the purpose of self-defense and to acquire a license. More than a century later, the United States Supreme Court has chosen to strike down the New York's long-established authority to protect its citizens. This ruling contradicts both common sense and the Constitution and should deeply trouble us all. Oh, Joe, I'm sure you don't know more than Thomas, but whatever. In the wake of the horrific attacks in Buffalo and Uvalde, as well as the daily acts of gun violence that do not make national headlines, we must do more as a society, not less, to protect our fellow Americans. I remain committed to doing everything in my power to reduce gun violence and to make our communities safer. That's not true. I have already taken more executive actions to reduce gun violence than any other president during their first year in office, and I will continue to do all that I can to protect Americans from gun violence, which, by the way, when Kamala Harris and everybody was on the campaign trail, before he was, the nominee, Kamala Harris is like, well, we're just going to take executive action if they don't get together and do something. And Biden's like, you can't just do that with executive actions on guns. And then she just started laughing. So I'm like, it's really crazy that he picked her as a VP, but for people who thought Joe Biden was going to be some kind of moderate person who's going to come in and just, run things kind of normally, I just want to point out that he's a liar. Just wanted to point that out. I urge states to continue to enact and enforce common sense laws to make their citizens and communities safer from gun violence. As the late Justice Scalia recognized, the Second Amendment is not absolute. For centuries, states have regulated who may purchase or possess weapons, the types of weapons they may use, and the places they may carry those weapons. And the courts have upheld these regulations. I call on Americans across the country to make their voices heard on gun safety. Lives are on the line, which guns also save lives. But when he was in the White House as a vice president, the DOJ like ran a study, or I guess it was DOJ or CDC or something. But anyway, it's hard to get like some really nailed down numbers, but guns save anywhere from 500,000 to 3 million lives every year. So when you look at gun crime and you take out a lot of gun deaths are from or suicides, and mass shootings, which mass shootings is just like 3 or 4 people are killed at a time. So there's like gun violence and other stuff like that. Gosh, that kind of stuff happens all the time in Chicago, DC. There's some really bloody Juneteenths, man. Juneteenth weekends. But you didn't hear too much about that kind of stuff, did you? And it wasn't in his statement, was it? They're very calculated about what they want you to be upset about. And you should be upset about Uvalde. Oh my gosh, you should be so upset, especially given how the cops acted, because they really could have stopped the shooter within like 3 minutes. And they didn't. Why, I don't know. And I hope we get to the bottom of it, because nothing really makes sense. They failed every sort of like protocol. Doesn't make sense what happened. But there was a failure there from the government to protect its citizens. There was a failure there. So don't tell me that some other people being armed who try to do something can't make up the difference. Because as a matter of fact, the border security person who took out the shooter, he was off duty there. He was getting his hair cut. And he borrowed the barber's gun. He didn't have his own gun. He borrowed a gun that was in place from another citizen. So what if he wasn't able to get that gun from that person and go in and take that kid out? There'd be another classroom that would have been down. Who knows? Who knows? The Justice Department said a crazy statement. Breaking, the DOJ released a statement that they respectfully disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling on New York gun law. The Department of Justice remains committed to saving innocent lives by enforcing and defending federal firearm laws. You can go ahead and read it yourself, but just some questions here, or rather some statements. The DOJ, Department of Justice, doesn't just get to respectfully disagree with a ruling of the Supreme Court. That's not their place. That's totally not their place. So just respectfully disagree. So what does that mean? Like, are you just is that just you voicing your disdain, which again isn't your place? You're supposed to execute the law, and the law was challenged and it was interpreted by the Supreme Court. Like, that's our system working, and their job is to faithfully execute those laws. Okay, so there is no respectfully disagree. There was no point of even voicing your opinion on that. But now that you have, does that mean you want to ignore it, or what? What does that mean? What does that mean? This is so inappropriate. And it's funny because Merrick Garland, when he was named by Obama to take the spot that Gorsuch has, thank God, McConnell and them held out for Trump, and thank God the election went the way that it did in 2016. But people were like, he's a gun grabber, and people are pushing like, no, he's not that bad, and Republicans are lying and stuff. If you flash back, conservative media have settled on Merrick Garland's narrative. He's a liberal gun snatcher. And they wanted to debunk that. And as Stephen Miller here pointed out, it panned out. They were right about that. He's egregious at the DOJ, from the White House coordinating with the National School Board Association and sending the letter to the Justice Department, and so they can like do the Patriot Act on parents and other kind of stuff like that. Garland sending out his like memo and stuff, like entertaining the um just really really woke crazy stuff at the DOJ. It's really bad, and he's so unworthy of that office. But you respectfully disagree with the ruling of the Supreme Court. Like, I don't care if you disagree with that, but there's been a ruling on the law. If you want to have an opinion on the law, you should probably become a lawmaker and try to write some. But that's just nutty, just absolutely nutty. Okay, well, there's been other kind of crazy comments. I'm not surprised Piers Morgan weighed in. I got a couple from him. He retweeted the SCOTUS blog's ruling on it, announcement. He said America's response to its recent mass shooting is to make it even easier for Americans to use guns. The Second Amendment is now being interpreted as a right to bear arms as part of an unregulated civilian militia. Oh boy. And so Ben Shapiro has said that's not a response to mass shootings. It's called reading the Constitution. We don't interpret the Constitution in response to current events, or if we do, we're doing it totally wrong. And so he had said, do you really agree with the SCOTUS ruling? Do you genuinely feel this is the right way for America to go, given the levels of gun violence in the US? Now, I think it's always funny when British people comment on stuff. And Ben Shapiro was right. And then he did end up retweeting that comment from Piers Morgan. He's just like, people do not have an understanding of our Constitution. Our Constitution doesn't grant our rights. It limits the government. We do have an inalienable right to bear arms. And for reasons I've already stated. And I understand people are triggered by that. A friend of mine said that guns are in America's DNA. And he's someone who doesn't like guns, but he was just stating the fact. And that's right. It is. And if you don't like it, there are other places to go. And I mean that sincerely. And if you really, really don't like it, I guess you could always campaign on trying to just get rid of the Second Amendment. That's not going to go well. That's really not going to go well. And that's why no one does it. And they always try these little tactics to undermine the Second Amendment so they can one day get there. So they can one day, they'll use one tragedy after another to rev up people's emotions. And then they'll be like, well, we need universal background checks, which you can't do universal background checks, really enforce it without some kind of registry. And they're like, well, what's wrong with you? You don't want, we need the registry so we can enforce these laws. And you're a bad, bigot person who wants people to have guns and not know where they are. And they'll make those kind of emotional arguments. And when they have the registry, they'll know where they are and they can pick them up. Now, there'll be people who say, I don't have guns. I lost them in a terrible boating accident, which the first time I heard someone say that, I didn't realize it was a joke. I'm like, oh, wow, that's weird. That's a lot of property just gone. That's too bad. And then I saw people were repeating it. I'm like, oh, that's a thing people say. That's a joke. Yeah, criminals are still going to get their guns, and they're definitely not going to tell you that they have them, especially if they obtain them illegally and stuff. The goal is to just disarm Americans. And how do you do that with like 400 million guns? I don't know. Someone asked me today, because I made a post yesterday about abortion, and someone said they don't want government interference, and that's because they don't like it, but they don't want government interference. I said, have you ever considered that abortion is government interference because someone is committing homicide? That's what it is. I don't like to say murder, but it is homicide. And you can conspire to go to your doctor, and you can do this. And the reason why you can do this is because there's no legal action because of it. So just because, one, there is no right to abortion, and there's certainly no obligation or reason why we should make it accessible and stuff, in which people will say that we need it so they can be safe, but abortions aren't safe. That's the whole entire point, to make sure that the baby is dead. So Anyway, someone replied back to me and said, "Oh, but if we make guns illegal, they'll just all be illegal, right?" And so I understood the point they were trying to make, but I replied to them. I said, if guns were illegal in the United States, I'm assuming we're in some kind of war with the government." And all liberties are on the line. And they didn't reply back, but that's not going to be an easy thing to do. We are not other countries. And so again, when British people bring it up, people from the UK or whatever, I'm like, the reason why we are not, or one of the big reasons at least, is that we had guns to defend ourselves and we went to war with our tyrannical government, and that's why it's in our Constitution that we recognize the need of it. So there's that. We can't just throw it away to get with the times. We did not forget. We didn't forget, and we're not supposed to forget. It is a very good timeless document. You can make adjustments to it, sure, but to get rid of people's guns, it's just not going to fly. It's just not going to fly. So Pierce doesn't even, like, his response didn't even care about the Constitution at all. It's just about the feelings of what America is supposed to do in the moment. And I understand, but again, firearms do save lives. Firearms, especially for women, are great equalizers when we're in really bad situations. And again, they are for the purposes of a standing against a tyrannical government, so you can ensure all your other rights. And another thing with Piers is I know he's always had this war on the guns, and that was what his show was largely about. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why Ben just kind of shot up in fame, because he got him so good on his program, because he would trot out, people from actually, he had kids who were like victims of gun violence when Ben Shapiro was on his show. Like, they were supposed to pan the camera to him, but when Ben came on the show, he said, you stand on the graves of dead children, basically to make your point. And Pierce was like, "How dare you?" And he was really upset and offended. But because Ben kind of disarmed him of this tactic that he planned to use, they didn't have the camera pan to the kids in the audience who were victims of gun crime. And again, when Biden was in the White House with Obama, there was a study. They know that guns save lives, anywhere from 500,000 to 3 million lives. I know that's a big range, but it's hard to nail it down. But that's like the number they gave. I think that's all there's plenty of other tweets about it, but I'll leave it at that. I want to move on to the gas prices and Biden and his incessant need to blame every single other person other than himself and his bad policies. So people who don't want to hold Biden accountable, I don't know, you guys are really silly, ridiculous, especially when things like this exist.
But kiddo, I want you to just take a look, okay? You don't have to agree, but I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate. Okay?
Yeah, so that still exists, was a thing that happened. He promised to take them down, the fossil fuel industry. He didn't want to work with the people in the industry. He said that multiple times, including on the debate stage. I've played a couple of clips before. I'm going to have to do a compilation, I guess, because people are really trying to avoid the fact that this is what Biden wants. Now, do I think he wants bad poll numbers? Absolutely not, because he complains about it all the time. But he complains about the journalists being mean to him, basically. And I'm like, what about the valid criticism, though? You're going to address that or not? I guess not, because he likes to shift the blame.
So let's be honest with one another. My message is simple. To the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump, this is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now. Do it today.
So I don't know how many conversations he's actually had with people who run like the gas stations, and he didn't say like the big companies. He said people who run the gas stations. I've gone to gas stations and had conversations with people who are like running the gas station, and they talk about how little they make from the gas right now. How little they make and how big of a risk the industry is. So him shifting the blame to everyone else, oh, it's just greedy, 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 while they know that supply affects the price. But Biden has issued many policies to hinder the supply. As a matter of fact, just last month, they did stuff to block different leases. So them trying to pretend like it's just the greedy oil companies and it's just your gas stations that wake up every morning and twiddle their evil mustaches and are like, wow, we gotta destroy the people. We gotta break their spirits. That's really not what's happening. And it's so out of touch. And the gas station that the person I was talking to on the gas station, and he told me that they're not making a lot off of it. I started the conversation because I'm like, I always try to go to this one because I see you guys are trying to hold out and keep it like as low as you can before you raise it. Because they were always like maybe about 10 cents cheaper than if you just drive a little further down the street. But I mean, they were hurting themselves, and these people, they hope that you come in the gas station, and since you're there at their place, that you'll come in and that you'll buy a couple of different products, within the station itself to help it keep going. But Biden just being like, you guys, this is a time of war, you got to lower your prices to reflect, what they're getting. Like, they're only making like a couple cents off of the gas, at least from the people I talk to. And those prices that I see, at least in Michigan, are comparable to everywhere else. So he's off his rocker, but he's also coming for Republicans who are blaming him and people who are blaming him and just really wants to keep blaming Putin.
So for all those Republicans in Congress criticizing me today for high gas prices in America, are you now saying we were wrong to support Ukraine? Are you saying we were wrong to stand up to Putin? Are you saying that we would rather have lower gas prices in America and Putin's iron fist in Europe? I don't believe that.
And I don't believe that this is solely Putin's fault. So, and there's data, and we remember like life before the invasion. So, and prices were going up and inflation was high. It's higher now. That's true. But the more Biden blames Putin for the struggles of everyday Americans, I don't know what the end game is for this, other than people going like, yeah, you can't blame Biden, you got to blame Putin. It's not like people are going to be all ready to take up arms and, I don't know, fight Putin or what. Like, that's just not like the feeling it is. So him continuously blaming the struggles of Americans on Putin, it just makes it seem like we're losing against him. He's already dropped the ball, but now he's passing the buck, which is something he said he wouldn't do, and he's blaming it on Putin. But I'm sure Putin and his allies and his buddies are very happy to hear how much harm that they've caused the United States of America, so much that the president gets up frequently and says, yep, Putin is the reason why you're all suffering. It's just not a good look from the commander in chief, in my opinion. But he's also wrong. And so there's been some honest moments and about what has caused inflation, and Granholm got caught up in not being on board with the sort of information and communication that's gone out.
Secretary Granholm, you and the president have framed this war in Ukraine as the primary driver of the spikes in energy costs. That's the largest contributor to overall inflation. But the Fed chairman was on the Hill today, testified, he was asked a question, is the war the primary driver of inflation? And his answer was no. How do you square that? Is he wrong?
I didn't hear what he said on that, but I think most people acknowledge that the price of fuel is a big driver of inflation. And in fact, they've put large percentages on it. And so we know that the the war in Ukraine having driven up the price of fuel because it crimps supply. It's a total supply and demand question. We've got to make up for the million barrels per day that have lost. We will have a demand problem when China opens up after COVID. There will be additional upward pressure on supply. This is why we need, not just in the U.S., but we need globally more supply brought on board. And
his full quote was, no, inflation was high before, certainly before the war in Ukraine broke out.
Well, I think most would say that the price of fuel has exacerbated inflation.
So we can all acknowledge that gas prices, when they go up, they affect everything else. That's obvious. But just to pretend that the war is the only reason why people are experiencing inflation, or that or high gas prices and stuff, it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. Well, I guess it makes sense if you just want someone else to blame, but it's just not true. It's just not true. And also there is really a lack of willpower to, I think, really make these prices go down. So Granholm, by the way, who used to be the governor of my state, and the time she presided over, we called it the last decade. She's already said, hey, we need to kind of look toward different avenues for our energy, and the prices aren't going to really go down. I'm like, they can go down if we fix the issues that we're having here. But why are they saying they're not going to go down? Oh, because they don't plan to really solve those problems.
The real truth is that as long as our nation remains overly reliant on oil and fossil fuels, we'll feel these price shocks again. This is not going to be the last time. The next time there's a war, the next time there's a pandemic or another hurricane, these extreme weather events we are experiencing, they will impact the access that we have to fossil fuels. The only way out of these boom and bust cycles is to break that sole reliance, and that means diversifying our fuel sources by deploying clean energy.
So they really, really want us to go that route. And I've said it many times, as long as we are going organically to that, they're not, trying to force it by getting rid of, to bankrupt the oil company and to just subsidize the crap out of windmills and electric cars and all that kind of stuff. That'd be different. If it's just kind of like a technology progression and a market progression, and people are like, oh yeah, this makes sense for me financially to do this, that'd be different. But that's not where we're at. That's not where we're at. And not everybody can go out and afford to buy something like a Tesla. And even if they could, can everybody afford, if a part breaks down, you got to pay 10 grand or something to fix something within it? I don't think so. That's not where the average person is at. And there will always be different things in the news that will impact the price of gas. My dad, I remember when we were young, and he'd be like, oh, better get some gas tonight because such and such happened over in the Middle East, and I think the price of gas is going to go up. So he would watch that stuff. So it is a global market, but they keep talking about how the supply is the price is driven by the lack of supply, and they want to blame the oil companies and say, hey, you guys aren't doing enough. And then at the same time, they want to tie their hands and demonize them. And you've had the Petroleum Institute speaking out, the BP spoke out about some of the lies and stuff that the Biden administration were pushing on them as far as blame goes, and they've given suggestions on things they can do. But here's the deal. I already played for you guys a video where Biden is like, I'm going to destroy the fossil fuel industry, I'm not going to work with them, etc. It's a very risky business when you have people who are devoted to destroying them. So you want them to spend all these billions of dollars to, make more refineries and get more money out, when it takes time to recoup those sort of investments. But you're saying what? You don't want them to be in business 5 years from now, 10 years from now? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is the sort of climate that they want, that they've created. And I wonder how that little girl feels who went up and shook Joe Biden's hand. Well, he shook her hand because she question him, and he's like, I guarantee. I wonder if she can afford her gas. Maybe she can, because a lot of these people are I don't know, rich libs, and they didn't get enough love from daddy or something when they throw Molotov cocktails and BLM riots and whatnot. I don't know. But everyone else is feeling it. And for people to just pretend like he has nothing to do with it when this is like his end game, this is what he announced, this is a result of his policies. And not just the supply issue with the gas, but also the spending. Like, we spent a lot of money with COVID, and when we had the American Rescue Plan come in, Republicans are like, this is not going toward COVID. Like, this is not even like a COVID bill. They're like, oh, you Republicans are terrible. You want people to die. And then they passed it, and then they started admitting there's so much stuff in there, because Jen Psaki tried to say that Republicans are against funding the police because the American Rescue Plan, people can use those funds to fund the police. And it's like, but ma'am, that was supposed to be a bill for COVID. Thank you for admitting it wasn't really a COVID bill. But we blew a lot of money, and then they did the infrastructure bill as well, and they spent a lot of money there. And Biden wants to keep spending money, and just printing so much money that we don't have. Yes, that adds to inflation. So the time that happened during the pandemic with Trump and them printing a lot of money, people feel like that was like a necessary thing with some regards, what they had to do. I don't think we should have ever shut down the economy and shut 15 days or so. The spread was basically the beginning of the end of his presidency. And but they print a lot of money, and there are people who desperately needed it and needed the help from like the $1,400 in 2000 or whatever the payments were. But man, if you were like at the mall and you saw like Nike and Converse and Champs, you know, those stores were always having sales, especially Nike. How much people were getting paid with like unemployment stuff. People were going out and they were spending their money, and they weren't necessarily spending it wisely. There were women in my community who were using it to go get work done, probably so they could do, I don't know. I was going to say OnlyFans, but they could be doing it for other reasons. Just look cute in the club, I guess. But they were using that money to get work done rather than putting it in their savings or using it for their babies. I was buying clothes during, was it 2021 or 20, I guess it had to be 2021, but I was in a store buying some clothes, and I overheard a woman talking about how she got like the check for her son, and she was like, well, this is his money, so I'm going to ask him what he wants. And he wanted some kind of expensive scooter bike or something. So she's like, well, it was his money. It was, you know, that's what they gave it to me for. So she went ahead and she bought a bike. So people have more money in their savings after the pandemic than they had in it before. So we made a lot of bad decisions, or people who needed the PPP loans and never got it, and they went out of business. And there were people who got it, who I knew definitely didn't need it, but they took it. So our reaction to it really is why we're paying right now. And that's not only on Biden, and that's not only, I'm not trying to say this only on Trump, because there are some people who encouraged it. But then Biden got in and it got worse. And people were expecting things to just take off when Biden came in. They're like, he barely has to do nothing, and he's going to reap the benefits of this being a temporary artificial sort of depression and people going back to work and all this other kind of stuff. And Biden just comes in and he starts doing things that just don't make sense. He continues to spend. He makes policies that are bad for the supply of oil and other stuff, what should be current or future supply. People do think about future supply when they make these prices and other stuff like that. So he's just an awful president to live his life for so long, to get to here, to find out how bad he is at the job. It would be funny as a comedy if we all didn't have to live with the tragedy of it. Well, speaking about another bad policy with Biden, they issued like 700 pages, if I'm not mistaken, regarding to like Title IX, and they are definitely making it so that it is something that includes transgender students. So Title IX was supposed to be like different protections for women and stuff. So, but women have been absolutely overruled. They are second class to some of this gender identity stuff, and that's no exaggeration when you look at how people treated Leah Thomas versus the actual women on the swimming team at Penn State or UPenn, whatever. The swimmers, they didn't like it, and if they spoke out, they're like, this is this isn't negotiable. We will get you guys some counselors to talk to, so basically to make you on board with it. But Leah's gonna swim. Nothing you can do about it. We don't care if Leah's penis is exposed in the locker room at times and Leah still is into women. Like, we don't care. Leah's gonna swim. Leah's gonna swim. So that's those sorts of things. Title IX is now including gender identity within it as far as like discrimination. And by the way, they expanded this definition of sexual harassment. So it looks like if you misgender someone, that could also count. I would like for the White House to clarify that from what I'm seeing, but it does look like that, which would be bizarre. But actually, there was someone who sued for that, actually. Claiming that was sexual assault. But this is an article from the Daily Wire. The Biden administration on Thursday officially proposed extending Title IX's protections to transgender students. The proposed change would protect LGBTQI plus students from discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics, the Department of Education said in a statement. The department proposed the Title IX change on the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Law, which bars schools to receive federal funding from discriminating on the basis of sex. When Title IX was passed half a century ago, it was meant to protect the rights of women and girls in educational settings. Since then, it has been interpreted to apply to other protected classes, including LGBTQ people. Over the last 50 years, Title IX has paved the way for millions of girls and women to access equal opportunity in our nation's schools and has been instructional in combating sexual assault and sexual violence in educational settings, said the Education Secretary Miguel Cardinal said in a statement. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of this landmark law, our proposed changes will allow us to continue that progress and ensure all of our nation's students, no matter where we live, who they are, or whom they love, can learn, grow, and thrive in school. Along with the challenges on transgender students, the proposed rules would also overhaul the process by which students handle sexual assault and sexual harassment allegations. The overhaul would nix changes made by the Trump administration that were intended to make the process more fair for accused students. While campaigning for President Joe Biden said the Trump administration's changes shame and silence survivors and vowed to scrap them. The new rules will restore vital protections for students in our nation's schools, which were eroded by the controversial regulations implemented during the previous administration, the Educational Department said Thursday in the fact sheet accompanying the proposed rule. Those regulations weaken protections for survivors of sexual assault and diminished in the promise of an education free from discrimination, the department said, which that's not true. And there were boys who were innocent, who got trapped within these unfair policies. The new rules would roll back constitutional protections for students accused of heinous crimes, including the right to a live hearing, to cross-examine their accuser and the witnesses against them, and allowing a single investigator model that allows a single person to act as investigator, judge, jury, and executioner. Can you imagine like someone accusing you of something and you don't have the right to face your accuser or anything and not have like a proper hearing and trial? And like, this is crazy. And it did hurt boys who didn't do anything and basically got them kicked out of school. And it eventually was proven that they didn't do anything wrong, but that's a heck of a thing to go through. That's a heck of a thing to go through. This model would also prevent accused students from learning the evidence against them, such as what the accuser and witnesses are specifically accusing them of, and allow students to keep individual testimonies hidden, making it more difficult for wrongly accused students to file a lawsuit to protect their civil rights. Courts have consistently upheld civil rights for the accused students in recent years, and legal challenges to Trump administration's regulations all failed. It goes on to talk about in 2016, the Obama administration issued guidances for Title IX protections to apply to transgender students, which I remember, and I caused a big funk about that, so people who weren't aware, didn't know that Biden would do something like this. You just weren't paying enough attention. You weren't paying enough attention because that's something Obama did, but Trump reversed it. So here we are back in La La Land, where if your school doesn't, if there's a boy or something and he wants to use the girls' locker room or wants to be on the girls' sports team and etc., which physically has a huge advantage to these ladies, then the school could be denied federal funds. And that could include your child not getting a school lunch. So we're waiting for the official sort of announcement, and here's this stuff. It'll probably be in effect next year. So how do you feel about that? I think it's pretty nuts. So that if you are door knocking with any candidates, Republican candidates or anything like that, you absolutely need to bring that sort of thing up. People need to know what the government is doing. So families who are low income, who want their kids, who rely on these kids having these meals at school provided for. By the way, I was a kid who was had free lunch from the time I went into the time I graduated. Won't be able to have this if they don't let boys play in girls' sports, or if people don't respect the pronouns. Now, will it be carved out for like religious stuff? Yeah, sure, but I don't feel that's not fair to everyone else, right? I'm saying that there should be religious carves out, but if you don't want to call someone by their preferred pronoun and stuff, you should need a religious protection to not be able to do that. It's compelled speech. So we're not in a good place. And people who thought Joe Biden was going to be moderate, you were wrong again. Wrong again. But anyway, that is a show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content that I have on the website, different articles, different videos. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. Please check out different shirts and stuff that we have, like I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For, and Be Better Not Bitter, all kinds of good stuff. And we'll have more soon at the site. Tomorrow might be the big day for Roe to get struck down. Roe v. Wade. So we will see, and I'm sure it'll be a big day if that happens. Gosh, we'll see. It'll be a brand new world tomorrow, or we could be all upset and angry. I don't know. But anyway, God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.